Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Real Talk. No, this is not clickbait. We are in the middle of a real estate market crash, but it's not the one that you think. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what does a real estate crash really mean and what are the different types of real estate crashes. And the type we're in is not the type that most people think. This is Real Talk, where we like to rant about things that don't fit anywhere else. My name is Meade, with the principal broker for Domicile Real Estate, where we are on a mission to help California's renters become homeowners. If you have residential real estate in Los Angeles and Orange counties that you would like to buy or sell, absolutely reach out to us. We would love to help you with that and lend you our expertise. Let's go ahead and get started. I wanted to put this video together mainly because I saw a presentation last week from the California Association of Realtors chief economist, Jordan Levine, who is an economist I respect very much. I agree with him probably 90% of the time, which is just about more than most. Anyhow, he prepared some slides that I thought were kind of interesting and different. It's statewide data. I normally do not like using other people's slides, but in this case, they're so good and they really illustrate a point. So let's go ahead and get started. Grab a cup of coffee and let's talk about the current real estate market crash. So here we are. And I want to talk about something and tell you what's going on in this chart because I think this one is kind of a great entree. This is pending home sales. And the dark blue is 2021 and the light blue is 2022. So let's go ahead and look at December. In 2021, 16,500 single family homes statewide were pending. This year, 7,200, over a 50% reduction. And if you look, that has been the story all year long. Every single month in 2022 has seen fewer pending sales. We aren't in a market crash on price. We are in a market crash on number of units and on volume. The real estate market is literally half the size that it was versus a year ago. Now, this one tells us a little bit about why, right? This is the new listings growth month to month to date for the current month versus what's been happening in terms of new listings hitting the market. So if we go back to April, right? Huge jump in listings April 2021, and then things began to underperform year over year. We saw things get a little bit better in the spring, not really. And then we see July pretty much through November of this year. Look at these volume numbers. These aren't small changes in the market. These are huge changes. So our supply of new homes hitting the market has really been cut off, which I think was an unexpected move for a lot of people. I think a lot of people figured interest rates would go up and prices would fall dramatically. But as we can see, the market had kind of another kind of twist in it to show us. This is a chart I really like quite a bit. And this is basically an annualized version of the expected home sales for the year. And if you look here, if we go back to 2000, if we go back to this kind of like 2007, 2008 era, this is where we hit this bottom in terms of the rate at which homes were selling. Look at how much higher up it has been almost the entire time since that period of 2007, 2008. The only time we got close to those numbers was the beginning of 2020. And what was happening in the beginning of 2020? I think we all know why volume was down during that time period. And if we look here at 2022, the gray lines here, this really shows you what happens middle of the year. And then this volume just dropped. And look at where we are right now. We are approaching that low point that we have the lowest number of home sales, the lowest rate of home sales since the low point of the financial crisis, 2007 and 2008 area. So this really puts it in perspective, I think, just kind of the level of magnitude of the slowdown in terms of number of units sold, not in terms of prices. And speaking of prices, this is a chart that I thought was kind of cool and interesting. The blue is 2020, green is 2021, and the red is 2022. This is the percentage of homes that have closed above list price. And I think this is a pretty fascinating little chart here. You see towards the beginning of 2020, what was going on? Only 25% of homes. Even by the middle of 2020, 32%. And then as our market just ramped up and roared through 2021, I mean, peaking at 72% and 74% in the spring of homes were selling above list price. But look at where we are today. You know, this curve has kind of come down gently. It's starting to flatten out. Even today, 21% of homes are selling above their list price, which I think is interesting because if you look at the headlines and you ask people on the street to guess what percentage of homes are selling above list price, I think most people would guess something between 0 and 5%. But in fact, actually 1 in 5 homes is selling above list price. And then finally, we have kind of a really interesting chart, and something I'm always talking about is that pricing data is not uniform, especially in a changing market. So what actually are we looking at, right? If we slice this up by property type statewide, we notice something interesting. Year over year, single family homes in California, negative 0.6%, but condos plus 2.7% in terms of pricing year over year. If you watched our first time home buyer end of year recap for 2022, we actually found very similar numbers to these in Los Angeles and Orange County. So I think that holds true. What doesn't hold true though is pricing data. And if we slice up the state here geographically, look at what we end up in. Central Coast, flat pricing year over year. Central Valley, meaning Bakersfield, Fresno, those markets, negative 1.3%. The far north, so think like Eureka, well north of the Bay Area, negative 3.7%, but the San Francisco Bay Area, negative 5.8%. And look at the contrast with Southern California, 0.0 or dead flat. So this should tell you something about our market. Now, why is it important that sales are in a market crash, but prices are not? And why is it important to understand that? And how does that affect your decision making? Well, first off, why are we here? Why is the market responding with fewer sales rather than drastically lower prices? Well, a big reason for that is a reduction in the supply of housing. What causes price changes is when supply and demand are out of balance and when that balance level changes. So when we were way undersupplied of housing, prices went up. When supply and demand are somewhat in balance or near balance, prices tend to be pretty flat. Small gains, small drops. It is only when we have a huge abundance of inventory versus demand that we see big price drops. And there are a number of reasons, structural things in the California real estate market that prevent huge gains in supply like some people might expect. So probably the first of those is interest rates. And we've really got two reasons. Number one, if you are a move up buyer, that is someone who puts their home up for sale and then buys a bigger one. Normally, when you think of moving up, you think, can I afford a $200,000 more expensive home? Now, because of interest rates, you may be facing a substantially higher rate than you have on your current home. What that means is that you don't just have to account for the cost of going up in the price of the house, but you have to account for the difference in the interest rate as well. So that person who is not going to move up, that removes a sale and it removes a buyer. The other interest rate issue is people who need to sell. Either they're moving out of the area, perhaps somebody has passed away, they've inherited a property. If that property has a very low rate mortgage on it, people do not want to give that up. They are much more likely to keep that home as a rental if possible, which means there may still be a sale if they're moving up because they're buying another house, but they're not selling the old one, they're holding on to it, which reduces inventory in our market. Now, finally, we do have a third reason that interest rates, or a third reason that we are seeing lower sales volume as the much more dominant force versus lower prices. The reason for that is in California. If you're a first-time home buyer, you might be unfamiliar. We have something called Proposition 13. This was passed in the late 1970s, and it makes property taxes in California work different than just about any other state. When you buy a home in California, your property tax assessment is based on your purchase price. That is pretty universal in most places, generally speaking, very common. Here is the uncommon part. In California, if we have a great year in the market and your home is now worth $1.2 million a year later, your property tax assessment does not change to $1.2 million. By law, that assessment can only go up 2% or $1,020,000. So you can see over time, what does this do to people? It means that they are paying much lower property taxes versus the value of their property. These are in effect golden handcuffs that keep people locked into properties, and locked in means they do not put those properties up for sale. And that drastically reduces our inventory. And that's the reason why we're not seeing these giant price swings like you might expect based on how the interest rates went up. And these are factors that are not going to change anytime soon. There is very little political wherewithal to change Proposition 13. Anyhow, that's all I've got for you guys. Questions, comments, we love them. If you are looking to buy or sell residential real estate in Los Angeles or Orange counties, we would love to work with you. Definitely reach out to us. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And we will see you again real soon.